important issue is the tech that's available in job centres, making sure that's appropriate for what people need. Part of the action plan is the launch this summer of the IT for Reuse Charter, encouraging organisations to set up device donation schemes, and we think they can play a helpful part as well.
Thank you. Question number 4, please, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, with women waiting up to 10 years for an endometriosis diagnosis, we are committed to improving the diagnosis, treatment and ongoing care for women with gynecological conditions. This includes approving 2 new pills to treat endometriosis this year, investing £5.6 million into much-needed research and taking action to cut gynecology waiting lists through our elective reform plan. This government is committed to prioritising women's health as we build an NHS fit for the future.
Steve Young.
I'd like to thank the Minister for her answer, and I know that my constituent Samantha, who asked me to raise this question today, will also be grateful for that reply. Further to her response, I wonder if the Minister will also work with colleagues across government to ensure that once the Employment Rights Bill has passed, the needs of those with menstrual health conditions like endometriosis are properly reflected in guidance and employer support, and that organisations such as endometriosis are engaged in this process.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my honourable friend for raising this. Far too many women, like Samantha, are forced to leave work because they don't get the support they need. That's why we're meeting the needs of women with endometriosis in the workplace through a number of measures in the Employment Rights Bill, strengthening statutory sick pay, making flexible working available to more people, and opening up conversations about women's health through employer action plans will benefit all employees managing the condition. We're turning the commitments in the Women's Health Strategy into tangible actions.
Gregory Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What commitment can the Minister give that the Community Diagnostics Centre programme, which was started under the Conservative government, will be... I'll start again, Mr. Speaker. What commitment can the Minister give that the Community Diagnostic Centre programme that was started under the last government will be used effectively to treat and diagnose not just endometriosis, but all of those conditions listed in the Women's Health Strategy?
Minister.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. He will be aware that we are taking forward a number of measures as part of the Women's Health Strategy, and he will also know that as a result of our pilot on women's health hubs, which have established in 41 out of 42 integrated care systems, we are working to make sure that we're supporting women's health and tackling women's health, including shifting care out of hospitals, reducing waiting lists and continuing to engage with local areas to use the learnings from women's health hubs to improve local delivery of services.
Select Committee, Sarah Owen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Women are waiting up to 10 years for diagnosis for endometriosis and adenomyosis. Our Women and Equalities Committee report recommended a maximum of 2 years, which is still a long time to live with intense pain and fertility decline, but it would still be an improvement. Given reproductive health issues cost the UK economy £11 billion a year, the sooner conditions are treated, the sooner women can get on with their lives. Does the Minister agree that investing in women's health is essential? And how is she raising the importance of the Women's Health Strategy with her colleagues, the Health Secretary?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for her question, and she is absolutely right that we need a focus on women's health. That's why our priority is on turning the commitments in the Women's Health Strategy into tangible actions, such as setting out how we will also eliminate cervical cancer by 2040 through the new cervical cancer plan. We've taken urgent action to support the nearly 600,000 women who are on gynecology waiting lists through our elective reform plan.
Mr. Speaker, 1 in 10 women in Northern Ireland are thought to have endometriosis with an average wait time
for diagnosis an unacceptable 9.5 years. Would you therefore agree with me that there needs to be a UK-wide strategy that equips our NHS with experienced surgeons, fertility experts, mental health support and pain specialists to aid these women who are on the most horrifically painful journey?
I thank the honourable member for raising this, and she is right that it is unacceptable that women can wait up to 10 years for an endometriosis diagnosis. The National Institute for Health and Care Excellence's updated guidelines on endometriosis makes firmer recommendations on referral and investigations, and this will also help women receive a diagnosis and effective treatment faster. It's also important that we continue to work across the whole of the UK as closely as we can on this important issue.
Member put to go.
Question number 5, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
The honourable member is right to raise this. The current system does trap too many in financial inequality. We want disabled people to have chances in work which others have always taken for granted. We'll invest an additional £1 billion a year by the end of the decade in work, health and skills support.
I've spoken with several disabled constituents who are deeply fearful about the proposed cap to the limited capability for work and work-related activity element of universal credit. Research by Sense shows that 1 in 4 disabled people with complex needs could be pushed into debt if these changes go ahead. Will the Minister and his colleagues in the Department for Work and Pensions review this damaging proposal?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At the moment, there are 200,000 people out of work on health and disability grounds who'd love to be in a job and say they could be in a job today if they had the support to make that possible for them. We are determined to provide them with that support.
Mr.
Speaker, as the Minister knows, PIP is a passport benefit for carers allowance. The Government's impact assessment suggests approximately 150,000 family carers will lose out due to the proposed changes to the eligibility of PIP. What further analysis has the Government done of the financial impacts of welfare reform on family carers?
We are consulting on the support that will be needed for those, perhaps 1 in 10 over the next few years, 1 in 10 of those currently claiming PIP. The support will be needed for those who lose their benefit, and that will include family carers, those who receive carers allowance at the moment.
Irene Campbell.
Mr. Speaker, question number 6.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are taking firm action across government to deliver our unprecedented ambition to halve violence against women and girls in a decade. This is underpinned by a new government strategy to be published this summer. Last year, we launched new domestic abuse protection orders and set out new measures to tackle stalking. Through the Safer Streets Mission Board and the Vogue Ministerial Group, ministers across government regularly meet to discuss and drive progress.
Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It saddened me to see an article in the Glasgow Times about the rise of sex crimes at Scottish train stations. Sexual abuse compensation advice found that there has been a 45% increase in sex crimes at Scottish stations, with a total of 87 crimes reported in 2024. Does the Minister agree with me that women should be able to use public transport without fear of assault, and could she tell me what her department is doing to tackle issues like this?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for raising this, and she is absolutely right. Everyone should feel safe while on public transport. That's why we've developed an ambitious programme to help make the transport network safe for women and girls. The British Transport Police also uses overt and covert policing techniques to target offenders using the network, promote reporting of sexual offences, and have committed to tackling VOG in their 2025 to 27 policing plan, which, with her experience in this area, Mr. Speaker, she may be interested to discuss with them.
On Friday, my 10-minute rule bill is due for second reading, and it calls for the government to publish a strategy to tackle interpersonal abuse and violence against men and boys. A strategy would ensure that male survivors of crimes considered to be violence against women and girls, like rape, sexual assault, domestic abuse, forced marriage and honour-based violence, are given dedicated support, and would also prevent male survivors from having to be in spaces that should be for women. They're currently included within the strategy for women and girls, due to be published this summer. So could the Minister reassure me and those male survivors who are in desperate need of support that the government will introduce a dedicated strategy for men and boys, and if not, why not?
I thank the honourable gentleman for raising his question. This is an issue that does affect women more than women and girls more, but I take the points that he's raised, and it is important that all people get the support that they need, and that I will look forward to looking at his private member's bill closely.
Shadow Minister Saki Bhatt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Time and time again, we on this side of the House have asked the government to hold a national statutory inquiry into the grooming gang scandal. Time and time again, the government ministers insisted the 5 local inquiries would be enough, despite there being a suspected 50 towns with grooming gangs operating in them, as reported by Charlie Peters from GB News. So let me ask the Minister today, now after the Casey review and the announcement of the National Commission, what reassurances can she give to victims that the 50 suspected towns will be investigated, and in a town or city which refuses to have an inquiry where there is a suspected grooming gang operating, will the Minister be able to compel the Commission to investigate? Or in other words, does the government have any accountability whatsoever?
Yes. Mr. Speaker, the Shadow Minister may not have listened to the statement closely on Monday because that was also confirmed by the Home Secretary. But what the Shadow Minister may want to know is that earlier this year, the Financial Times told us the reality of what went on inside the last government when it came to Alexis Jay's report. They say that Number 10 urged the Home Office ministers to, and I quote, to do more to engage with Alexis and draw up a plan for her recommendations. What one veteran admitted is that the report came at an unfortunate time and was maybe to some extent deprioritised or forgotten. Forgotten or deprioritised, and yet now they have the cheek to lecture this government about the action we're taking to support and protect victims.
Come to the topic, Lizzie.
Question number 1, please, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud to be driving our Opportunity mission as part of this government's plan for change to break the link between background and success. As part of our spending review, we've announced extending free school meals to all children with a parent on universal credit, lifting 100,000 children out of poverty by the end of the Parliament. Mr. Speaker, this is the difference a Labour government makes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent Theo, who is blind and a Brailleist, has not received a single usable Braille past paper despite being nearly a year into his A-levels, and reports that his GCSE papers last year contained so many errors they were nearly impossible to use. So will the Minister take immediate action to ensure exam boards fulfil their legal duties under the Equality Act to provide accessible examination materials and urgently review Ofqual's monitoring of...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm concerned to hear of the honourable gentleman's experience and that of his constituent. If he could provide me with some information, I can make sure that that's properly investigated.
Irene Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was shocked to read recently that Ofsted found 80% of teenage girls are being put under pressure to provide sexual images of themselves, as well as being contacted multiple times a night asking for these pictures. Would the Minister tell me how social media is being considered in a wider strategy which tackles violence against women and girls?
Secretary of State.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend, and I share her concern about what she's just set out there and about the impact it has on young women and girls. It's why the Science and Technology Secretary is bringing forward further action to make sure that girls are protected from harm, and it's also why later on this year we'll publish updated RSHE guidance to tackle all forms of misogyny and make sure that young men and young women are able to thrive in our country.
Secretary of State, Mims Davis.
I point to page 86 of Baroness Casey's report, saying there are a worrying number of live investigations covering an overlap between child sexual exploitation and criminal exploitation, which notes a significant proportion of cases appearing to involve suspects who are claiming asylum. Will the Secretary of State confirm which minister is directly responsible for safeguarding our communities, including those housed in asylum hotels, and going forward, if any individual moves into the community in changed accommodation, if the government managed to close hotels, as they claim, any dangers transferred from hotels to the wider community is accounted for?
Mr Speaker, the Right Honourable Lady will know that the Home Secretary made an extensive statement to Parliament setting out the actions that this government will take to address the many failures left behind by the party opposite. Baroness Casey outlined a decade of lost time, a failure to deliver justice for victims. This government will act. We will root out all forms of child sexual exploitation. We will keep children safe from harm, and we will make sure that perpetrators are finally prosecuted.
Member Davis.
We know for decades too many people block their ears and turn their backs on towns and individuals asking for help, as well as national calls. Can the Secretary of State confirm those in their ivory towers in Whitehall too can now be compelled to give evidence under oath on their actions and assumptions, vitally including senior civil servants, former Crown Prosecution Service employees and previous directors of public prosecutions?
Mr Speaker, as the Home Secretary set out on Monday, anyone found to have been responsible for covering up or for hiding vile crimes of child sexual abuse must and will be prosecuted. But I would say to the Right Honourable Lady, they had a decade. That was the lost decade that Baroness Casey talked about. The recommendations from Alexis J sat on a shelf and were not acted upon. But this government immediately brought forward the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill to deliver the biggest upgrade in child protection legislation in a generation, which they opposed.
Before we come to Prime Minister's questions, can I welcome to the gallery the Speaker of Pakistan? And we now come to questions. Adrian Ramsey.
Question number 1, Mr Speaker.
Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I have been asked to reply. My right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, has been attending the G7 summit in Canada. In an era of global instability, we are working with our partners to urge de-escalation in the Middle East, put pressure on Russia to agree to a ceasefire and deliver security renewal for the British people. Mr Speaker, the Air India plane crash last week was devastating. Our thoughts and condolences are with everyone affected by this awful incident, and we're working closely with the Indian authorities to support those in need. And Mr Speaker, 9 years ago we lost our beloved friend and colleague Jo Cox, who is a beacon of positivity and courage, and her legacy lives on. And I must also take this opportunity to also remember Sir David Amos, much missed by the whole of the House. Mr Speaker, this Sunday marks Windrush Day. We celebrate the extraordinary contribution the Windrush generation and their descendants to our country. And Mr Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others, and in addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Adrian Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Given the strong consensus across this House on the importance of de-escalation in the deeply worrying conflict between Israel and Iran, does the Deputy Prime Minister agree that the actions of this House must match its words? And will she therefore commit that before any further military support is given to the Israeli government, whether that's the potential deployment of the RAF jets or deployment of armed forces, that her government will first give MPs in this House a free vote?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, the situation in the Middle East is fast-moving and deeply concerning. There is a clear potential for significant and rapid worsening of the situation. And every step that we take, we will always be guided by what the safety of British nationals and the UK national interest. That's why we've deployed jets to the region so that contingency support is in place for our armed forces personnel, and it's why we're asking British nationals to register their presence, and we'll keep all advice under review.
Olivia Bailey.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Too many of my constituents are stuck in unsuitable housing. And after 14 years of inaction from the party opposite, local families are being split up because there are not enough affordable homes. Can I welcome this government's plans to turbocharge the delivery of social and affordable housing, including through the new National Housing Bank, and ask my right honourable friend to confirm that this government will finally give my constituents the security that they deserve?
Deputy Prime
Mr.
Minister.
Speaker, she's absolutely right to talk about the 14 years of failure by the Conservatives. Labour's turning the tide on the housing crisis, and I'm proud to announce today our commitment to establish a new publicly owned national housing bank backed by £16 billion of new finance. This includes £2.5 billion, Mr. Speaker, in low-interest loans for social housing to help achieve the biggest uplift to social and affordable housing in a generation.
Shadow Home Secretary Chris Phil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I associate myself with the Deputy Prime Minister's remarks about the tragic air crash in India and, of course, what she said about our dear colleagues Joe Cox and Sir David Amis. I also join her in calling for de-escalation between Israel and Iran, while noting everything possible must be done to stop Iran getting a nuclear weapon. Yesterday, the Leader of the Opposition and I met with survivors and family members of the rape gang scandal. Fiona, Teresa, Lucia and Marlon. They told us how authorities deliberately covered up the systematic rape of young girls and some boys by gangs of predominantly Pakistani heritage men. They covered it up because they cared more about so-called community relations than about protecting vulnerable girls. That is disgusting. The survivors told us they will only have confidence in an inquiry if it is independently led, has full statutory powers, covers all 50 towns affected, including Bradford, if those who covered this up are prosecuted, if foreign perpetrators are all deported, if survivors are closely involved, and if it is set up before the summer recess. Can the Deputy Prime Minister give the survivors and their families those assurances?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, first of all, can I thank him for his tone and putting the survivors and victims at the heart of his question here today. I think it's absolutely right that we all look at what's happened over the last couple of decades, the countless reports that we've had, and we look to implement that. He's absolutely right to also talk about the confidence people must have in that independent inquiry. And the member, my friend, the Shadow Home Secretary, spoke about that earlier this week in regards to Baroness Casey's report. So we will take that forward at speed, Mr. Speaker. It will be independent, it will have statutory powers, and we will implement the J report, which was he will have known about as the Shadow Minister in the Minister in charge at the time, and we'll get on with taking the action. I hope members of his party will take his tone in making sure the whole House put the victims first and we all work together to get to the bottom of this.
Well, I thank the Deputy Prime Minister for her answer. It is vital that scandals like this are never again covered up because of the racial background of perpetrators. And Baroness Casey's report said people who downplay the ethnic dimension are letting victims down, to use her words. So I do have to raise the language the Prime Minister used in January when he, I'm afraid to say, smeared campaigners as jumping on, quotes, a far-right bandwagon, simply for calling for the very inquiry he has now been forced to set up. Standing up for rape victims is not far-right. So will the Deputy Prime Minister apologise for what the Prime Minister said?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, I say, Mr. Speaker, that the Prime Minister did not just raise issues but acted on them. He brought the first prosecutions against grooming gangs, called for action to address ethnicity issues in 2012. And the honourable member will know that the data that the previous government collected was inaccurate and not complete. And Casey recognised this, and it's one of the recommendations that we will be taking forward. The Prime Minister made those comments specifically about Tory ministers who sat for years in the government and did absolutely nothing about this scandal.
Smearing campaigners, standing up for rape victims as far right is completely unacceptable, and the Prime Minister should never have said that. And I commend his predecessor, the member for Richmond, for the grooming gangs task force he set up, which led to 550 arrests in its first year. Now, Baroness Casey's report also said that a significant number of rape gang perpetrators were non-UK nationals or were asylum seekers, many of whom entered the country illegally. And we know, of course, that most illegal immigrants crossing the Channel are young men contrary to what the Chief Secretary said last week. So does the Deputy Prime Minister now accept that the small boats crisis is a crisis of public safety as well as a border crisis?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, this is a very serious issue and more needs to be done. And let me update the House. Working with our allies, we've carried out a series of major arrests to tackle smuggling gangs behind this vile trade. In the past month, a ringleader that smuggled almost 4,000 migrants has been jailed for 25 years. We could go further thanks to the law enforcement agreements we've struck with Germany, Italy, Serbia and the Balkan states. In stark contrast to the honourable gentleman, he was the man at the heart of the Home Office when immigration soared, we lost control of our borders and spent £700 million of taxpayers' money on persuading just 4 volunteers to be removed from Rwanda. I take no lectures.
If she wants to find out who's lost control of our borders, I suggest she looks to her immediate right. Because ever since the Home Secretary scrapped the Rwanda deterrent before it even started, illegal immigration across the Channel has gone up by over 30%. And so far this year, 2025 has been the worst year in history for illegal immigrants crossing the Channel. That is on her watch. That is down to her government. The Prime Minister is now planning crisis talks with President Macron, finally admitting, in his own words, that the situation is deteriorating. The government's laughable plan to smash the gangs lies in tatters. So will she now at last accept we need a removals deterrent so every single illegal immigrant arriving on these shores is immediately removed? Will she commit to that, yes or no?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, if they want to argue that 40,000 arrivals since July 24 are down to the scrapping of the Rwanda scheme, they need to explain why there were more than 43,000 arrivals in the same period starting in July 22 when the Rwanda agreement was in place. It's absolute rubbish, Mr Speaker. They lost control of our borders. We're getting control of our borders. He needs to apologise.
I don't see how she has the brass neck to claim she's got it under control. When the numbers crossing the Channel this year are the highest in history. She asks about the Rwanda deterrent. I'll repeat, she obviously wasn't listening to what I said earlier. The Rwanda scheme never started. And indeed illegal immigrants in Calais said they were...
Order! Order!
Just do it. I want to hear the question, and I'm sure our constituents want to hear the question and the answer. Crystal.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Rwanda scheme never started. Illegal immigrants in Calais were saying before the election how much they wanted the Prime Minister to get elected because he would help them get here. When Australia started a similar scheme about 10 years ago, it worked within a few months. Now, Mr Speaker, as a consequence of the government losing control, they are now accommodating growing numbers of illegal immigrants, many of whom cross the Channel, in asylum, hotels and flats. The Home Office's suppliers are now actively offering above-market deals to landlords to get hold of their properties to be used for illegal immigrants. In the meantime, hard-pressed young people here are unable to rent or buy. So why is this government prioritising housing for illegal immigrants above housing for our young people?
So again, Mr Speaker, I gently say to the right honourable member opposite that under their watch, immigration increased fourfold until it reached almost 1 million in a single year. They also created the backlog, 400 hotels, which we've reduced to just over 200 hotels in the first 12 months of us being in government, Mr Speaker. £1 million a day spiffed up the wall because they were so incompetent. We're building the homes that they failed to deliver over 14 years of consecutive failure by their government. They should apologise while we get on with the job of rebuilding Britain.
Goodness me, she's got a cheek. Housing starts in Q4 last year went down her mission to rebuild Britain is not going very well. She talks about asylum hotels. She obviously hasn't looked at the most recent numbers. The number of people in asylum hotels was higher in March this year than it was at the time of the last election, and she gave no answer about the priority being given to illegal immigrants over people living here already. Now, Mr. Speaker, a Zimbabwean paedophile due for deportation was recently allowed to stay in the UK because a court found he might face, quote, some hostility back in Zimbabwe, apparently breaching his Article 3 rights. What about the rights of children here to be protected from this dangerous paedophile? Who's looking out for their rights? Not the government. There are thousands of cases like this involving foreign criminals. So there is a solution. We need to scrap the Human Rights Act for immigration matters so this sovereign parliament decides on the law our courts apply. But her party voted against that. So I have a simple question. Why did the government side with foreign criminals and not the British public?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, again, Mr. Speaker, they had 14 years of failure on these issues. We've also included 4,500 foreign national offenders that have been deported since we came into office, Mr. Speaker, more than they did in the same period. I take no lectures from the Johnny-come-lately who couldn't do anything when he was in office.
Annalise Midgley.
Mr. Speaker, last Saturday marked 8 years since Grenfell. 8 years fighting for justice. The Hillsborough families, including Margaret Aspinall from Huyton, have campaigned for 36 years for the Hillsborough law. Decades. So can the Deputy Prime Minister tell me today, will this Labour government bring forward the Hillsborough law without delay? Will it honour the promises made to victims of state cover-ups? And will it finally deliver justice for the 97?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for her question and for the work with campaigners like Margaret in their fight for justice and for mentioning Grenfell, which, of course, with the 8th anniversary was not so long ago. We remain fully committed to bringing in a Hillsborough law. The state has failed victims and their families too many times in the past, and that is precisely why our focus is now on getting the legislation right. I can assure her that measures will be brought forward as soon as we're confident that they will deliver, Mr. Speaker, the justice victims deserve, and we want to do this at pace.
Daisy Cooper, Deputy Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of my party, may I associate myself with the Deputy Prime Minister's remarks about the Air India crash. And in a week when we remember the murder of Joe Cox and David Amos, our party's thoughts are with their friends and families and all those in this House who lost their beloved friends. We also remember those who died in Grenfell tragedy. Mr. Speaker, in 2003, we Liberal Democrats were incredibly proud to lead the campaign against the Iraq War, a war in which the UK blindly followed the US in a move which was not backed by the United Nations. In light of reports that President Trump is seriously considering joining the war between Israel and Iran, launching a US strike against Iran's nuclear facilities, can the Deputy Prime Minister confirm that if President Trump does do this, that today's Labour government will not blindly follow the US into war again?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the one thing I will say is we agree with President Trump that Iran must never have nuclear weapons. But we've been consistent in urging Iran to engage in the diplomatic process and work with the United States, and we continue to support that diplomatic approach.
Daisy Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm grateful to the Deputy Prime Minister, and we support those efforts. Today, the government is set to unveil its plans to cut personal independence payments and carers allowance, a prospect which one of my constituents described as terrifying. Liberal Democrat analysis of the government's own data suggests that 1.3 million disabled people are at risk of losing some support. So can the Deputy Prime Minister honestly say, hand on heart, that this is the change that 1 million disabled people and their carers were promised?
Well, Mr. Speaker, Labour is the party of work and also the party of fairness and social justice. We've announced the plan to get Britain working again, and we're clear on the principles, Mr Speaker, and I want to be clear on that. Those who want to work should be able to work, and those who can never work should be protected. The current system we've inherited doesn't support those that need that support, and also doesn't allow and enable those to get opportunities for employment. I have personal experience of it. I know what the Honourable Lady is saying. I know how some people are fearful of the changes, but this Labour government put its values into place and will ensure that people are supported into it where they can, and where they can't, they are supported. We are the party of the welfare state, Mr Speaker. We set it up back after the Second World War, and we believe it should be there for people who need it, but we should also help people into work.
Sarah Champion.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Mr Deputy Speaker, I welcome the... Yeah? Mr Speaker, there's too many deputies in the place today. I apologise. Mr Speaker, I welcome the government's announcement on grooming gangs. I'm sorry for stumbling. I've been floored by the point scoring that's going on around them. On all sides. I wonder if, if the Deputy Prime Minister is aware that the victims and survivors of grooming gangs are being denied compensation by the Criminal Injuries Agency on bizarre technicalities. They also deny all children of online abuse compensation. For me, this is a grave injustice, and they think they're better than the judge and jury. So I wonder what the Deputy Prime Minister plans to do, because personally, I think they should be abolished.
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, my honourable friend is a long-standing advocate for child protection, and I pay tribute to her campaigning on these issues. We share her determination to do what is right for the victims and the survivors, and we recognise that no sum of money can ever fully compensate for the horrors that they've experienced. And we are committed to funding efforts to tackle child sexual abuse in the future and support survivors to rebuilding their lives. And that's why we'll make it easier for victims to make personal injury claims through the civil courts by removing the 3-year time limit. And we're redoubling funding for therapeutic support services.
Carla Daniel.
Mr Speaker, this week is Refugee Week, an opportunity for this House to show solidarity with those fleeing war, persecution and oppression. Compassion and welcome are core British values, but for decades the Home Office has been undermining those values, as my new report, No Way Home, shows, by treating migration as a crime rather than making it work for our communities and for newcomers. So will the Deputy Prime Minister read the report and consider its recommendation to remove migration from the responsibilities of the failing Home Office?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, I'll commit to reading the Honourable Lady's report, because I think it's important we take all information on these issues. We inherited the asylum system under exceptional strain, which costs up to £9 billion per day, and will end the use of hotels through suitable self-sufficient accommodation for asylum seekers, minimising the impact on local communities, and will protect and support asylum seekers when demonstrating value for the taxpayers.
Jodie Gosley.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. On the 1st of July, Warwickshire County Council will permanently remove one of Nuneaton's 2 fire engines. Their decision is based on dubious data that does not accurately represent the current risk to residents, without accounting for local factors such as high deprivation. The cuts will put Nuneaton's lives in danger. Will the Deputy Prime Minister please look into this matter to confirm there has been sufficient scrutiny and a thorough risk analysis to ensure safety for the good residents of Nuneaton?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for raising this important issue. I know that the Fire Minister would be happy to discuss this further, and I'm committed to ensuring fire and rescue services across the country have the resources that they need to keep communities safe. The deployment of fire engines, though, is decided locally. So this really is a question for Warwickshire County Council, now led by Reform. So the member for Clacton should have a word with his county councillors in Nuneaton and get them to explain why Reform are cutting fire services.
Peter Shaw.
Mr Speaker, I remember when the Deputy Prime Minister was a fierce critic of austerity and a proud champion for the disabled. But today, her government is introducing its £5 billion disability cuts bill, which will push another 250,000 people into poverty. Does she agree that everyone has the right to oppose such devastating cuts. So is it the Prime Minister's intention to remove the whip from any Labour MP who does the right thing and votes against these disability cuts?
Yeah. Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, I gently say to the honourable member that we've given, he talked about austerity, we've given the biggest amount of increase to Scotland. And I've covered this point in an earlier question, Mr Speaker. We're absolutely committed to ending child poverty. We've already introduced free school meals. We're already supporting families. We've given a living wage rise to over millions of workers that need it. We're getting on the job, Mr Speaker, of rebuilding Britain. He's had decades of failure under Scotland. They deserve better.
Jonathan Davis.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Derbyshire's Derwent Valley is the home of the Industrial Revolution, and it is also now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. That community showed a Victorian sense of purpose which delivered improvements to people's everyday lives. So can my right honourable friend set out how the government's £39 billion investment in housing will instil that same drive while maintaining the unique character of the East Midlands' only UNESCO World Heritage Site?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question. I know he's a champion for regeneration across his constituency, and he's working hard to get homes built in his patch for his constituents. Our plan for change will deliver the biggest boost in investment in social and affordable housing in a generation. And for the first time in recent memory, Mr Speaker, we will give providers in his constituency a decade of certainty over the capital funding to build ambitious housing projects that honour Derbyshire's history.
King Timothy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Home Secretary says we should judge her success in smashing the gangs by whether the number of channel crossings falls. But under this government, the numbers are up by more than 30%. Yep. So by which date should we judge the Home Secretary? And if she fails, will she be fired?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, they continually vote against the measures that we're taking to smash the gangs. We're getting on with the job, Mr Speaker, working internationally to disrupt the abhorrent work of these smugglers and gangs, while he harps on from the sideline. He should apologise for their record in government, which was abysmal.
Mr Speaker, since becoming an MP, I've received thousands of pieces of casework from constituents who are stuck on social housing waiting lists. I've recently had an email from a woman with severe mobility issues, effectively trapped in her front room while she waits and waits for suitable social housing. Even when a home becomes available, she'll be forced to compete with other residents because there simply aren't enough affordable options. What will this new funding, the recent funding announced by the government, mean for my constituent and others like her who have already waited too long for a decent home?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, I thank my honourable friend, Mr Speaker, for highlighting the case, because it's not an isolated case. We inherited a really dire situation, and there's far too many people that don't have a safe and secure home that meets their needs. My right honourable friend, the Chancellor's announced a record funding, almost double the level provided by the previous government, who ended up handing back the cash for social and affordable homes, and Labour's plan for change, renewing our country and investing in Britain's future.
Other House to Edward Lee.
When the government, quite rightly, gives full and unequivocal support to Israel in its bid to end the scourge of Iran's nuclear weapons programme forever, will the government also work with our allies to try and convince the Israeli government that it's not in the long-term security interests of Israel to carry on with this policy of illegal settlements in the West Bank, which is simply leading to radicalisation and desperation throughout the region? Have not the overwhelming majority of Palestinian people have the right to yearn for peace and security in their own homeland, as the Jews yearn for their homeland for 2,000 years?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I thank the father of the House for his important question. Settler violence and expansion in the West Bank is appalling and completely unacceptable. Alongside our allies, we have sanctioned individuals responsible for inciting this extremist action, but a two-state solution is the only way to bring peace that the Israelis and the Palestinians deserve, and this is only achievable if the hostages are released, aid surged into Gaza and the ceasefire is restored, and we'll do everything we can to make that happen.
Ms. Kane.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In Scotland, over 10,000 children are stuck in temporary accommodation, including many in my constituency of Stirling and Strathallan. Too many families facing soaring rents, long waiting lists and dwindling options. It's just one of so many policy failings that we're all losing count and losing patience as public confidence in the SNP ability to govern collapses. What advice would she have for the Scottish SNP government as they continue to preside over a chronic failure to invest in the social and affordable housing Scotland so desperately needs?
Well, my honourable friend is right, Mr Speaker. Homeless levels are far too high, which has a devastating impact on those affected. Under the SNP, 10,000 children in Scotland shamefully have no fixed home to call their own, a record high. Our decisions have given Scotland a record settlement and the largest since devolution. We saw in Hamilton, Mr Speaker, how Scots are fed up with the SNP's excuses. They've been in power for nearly 2 decades and have nowhere left to hide from their failure.
Anne Davies.
Diolch, Mr Llefarydd. Welsh farmers are taking hit after hit, from Tory trade deals to Labour taxes. And now, on top of that, blue tongue restrictions affecting Wales and England will hamper cross-border trade. Over 550 farms on the border and key livestock markets rely on summer trading. Once in a year, opportunities like the Royal Welsh Show are crucial, and the disruption will be devastating. So will the Deputy Prime Minister commit to working with Welsh Government on a scheme to compensate for the losses?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, I gently say to the honourable member, you don't deliver for Wales by voting against an extra £1.6 billion for public services like I did at the Senate. We will be making sure that we support Wales and support Welsh farmers, and we'll continue to do that as a UK government.
Andrew Pence.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In the spending review last week, the government backed Peterborough with support for our new pool and sports quarter in the city. This commitment has the power to turn years of campaigning into a reality. But that's not all. The government has also recently approved the business case for our new station and given us new police. So can I ask the Deputy Prime Minister, does she agree that this is just the start and that places like Peterborough that were forgotten for too long by the party opposite are now top of this Labour government's agenda?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his comments and flagged by the 2 ladies that have made sure that those things happen. The Chancellor's guaranteed funding to accelerate projects like Peterborough's new sports quarter, including, Mr Speaker, a new Olympic-sized swimming pool. And I can also confirm today that, subject to the business case approval, we will provide nearly £48 million of funding for a new city centre quarter and a refurbished Eastern Station building.
Paul Holmes.
Recently, a small family business in my constituency was burgled by a prolific offender who was serving an 8-month suspended sentence. The man was caught, arrested, charged and appeared at court, where he was given another 8-month suspended sentence and released. The business was offered £200 in compensation. Does the Deputy Prime Minister think that's justice served, or is this government now soft on crime and soft on the causes of crime?
Well, first of all, Mr Speaker, I'm really sorry to hear about that. Hard-working business people that spend a lot of their time building up a business should expect the full force of the law to protect their property and protect their interests. And can I also, while I've got the opportunity, congratulate the honourable member for running Hamble Valley's very first pub competition this year. I hope I'm going to get an invite. But he's absolutely right, Mr Speaker, to say that we've got to have increased police numbers and making sure they're responsive to people's concerns. We're doing that. His government let them down.
Joe Powell.
Mr Speaker, Saturday marked 8 years since 72 people lost their lives in the Grenfell Tower fire. 8 years without justice, but finally the prospect of some systemic change following the public inquiry. So I welcome the government's commitment to barring all the cited companies from accessing public contracts and its full support to the police investigation to deliver real accountability. Can the Deputy Prime Minister also reassure our community that alongside the Hillsborough law, the government will consider some independent oversight so that victims from the Post Office to Hillsborough to Grenfell know inquiry recommendations will actually lead to real change?
Deputy Prime Minister.
I thank my honourable friend. The Grenfell fire was a national tragedy, and we must never forget the 72 lives that were lost, and it was an honour to pay my respects at the 8th anniversary at the weekend. We do remain fully committed to introducing the Hillsborough Law, including a legal duty of candour for public services and criminal sanctions for those who refuse to comply. I know my honourable friend speaks with passion and authority on this. As I speak to the Grenfell community, I know this is something that they really want to see happen as quickly as possible, and we're exploring reforms to encourage to get to the truth more quickly and deliver the meaningful change that these victims deserve.
Peter Fortune.
Thank you. Bishop Challoner School has been helping to educate Bromley pupils for nearly 75 years. But it will close its doors in July due to Labour's decision to impose VAT on independent schools. Given the Deputy Prime Minister's well-publicised views on independent schools, does she welcome this closure, or would she like to apologise to the parents, pupils and staff?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, I've said for a long time that the taxpayers of this country shouldn't be subsidising tax breaks for private schools. I welcome all schools that give children a great education, but I'm also determined to ensure we've got qualified teachers in every classroom for every child, something their government failed to do.
Adam Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As a trained physics teacher and a former engineering lecturer, can I ask the Deputy Prime Minister what this government is doing to help people improve their maths skills after they have left school? I came across an awful case the other day. A 61-year-old man who believed he'd counted up 7 billion of government spending when there was really only 27 million. What can we do for people like the leader of Reform UK, who evidently can't add up?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, my honourable friend highlights an important fact. Reform sums simply don't add up. He'll be pleased to know that we're investing £136 million for skills boot camps, and I will be sure to send the details to the honourable member for Clapton.
That completes Deputy Prime Minister's questions. We'll let the front bench change over. Now come to the statement. Secretary of State for Transport, Heidi Alexander.
Mr Speaker, with permission, I'd like to make a statement on HS2. As a London councillor over 15 years ago, I remember hearing the then Labour government's bold plans for high-speed rail to link our major cities to address the capacity needs of the future, and in the words of the then Prime Minister Gordon Brown, to join the high-speed revolution sweeping the world. It was a vision of a confident nation, a clear signal our great towns and cities in the Midlands and the North, with potential that had been untapped at best and ignored at worst, could be places of opportunity and aspiration again. That was the promise of HS2. But after a decade and a half of Tory timelines planned then delayed, routes drawn up then cancelled, budgets calculated then blown, promises made then broken, we inherited a project that had lost the trust of the public, that created an image of a Britain woefully unable to deliver big infrastructure projects, and that axed swathes of the country it was originally meant to serve. Phase 1 could end up becoming one of the most expensive railway lines in the world, with projected costs soaring by £37 billion under previous Conservative governments, and £2 billion of taxpayers' money sunk into Phase 2 work before it was cancelled by the previous government. There was also clear evidence of poor management. Despite the 2020 Okavi review advising that government halt construction contracts pending improvements in price and simpler engineering, they pressed ahead regardless. It has been no less than a litany of failure. And today I'm drawing a line in the sand, calling time on years of mismanagement, flawed reporting and ineffective oversight. It means this government will get the job done between Birmingham and London. We won't reinstate cancelled sections we can't afford, but we will do the hard but necessary work to rebuild public trust, and we've not wasted any time. Since July, we have appointed new leadership of HS2 Limited to turn this project around. We've made clear to the new Chief Executive, Mark Wilde, that the priority is building the rest of the railway safely at the lowest reasonable cost, even if this takes longer. We've started the year-long task of fundamentally resetting the project, including commissioning infrastructure expert James Stewart to lead a review into governance and oversight. As part of that reset, we have reduced financial delegations to HS2 Limited, placing a lid on spiralling costs until the reset is complete and we regain confidence. And we've supported Mark Wilde's review of the size and cost of HS2 as an organisation. But today we're going further. Mr Speaker, I can confirm we've published the landmark James Stewart review and the department's response. The review, commissioned in October of last year by my predecessor, was a tough independent look at how the Department for Transport and Government delivers major projects. The Government not only welcomes the review, but we have accepted all the recommendations. My department is already delivering on these, specifically across 5 key areas. First, the lack of oversight and scrutiny. Quite simply, there have been too many dark corners for failure to hide in. The Ministerial Task Force, set up to provide oversight of HS2, had inconsistent attendance from key ministers, including the then Transport Secretary and the then Chief Secretary to the Treasury. The Government has re-established the task force with full senior attendance as per the review's recommendations. A new performance programme and shareholder boards will offer much needed oversight and accountability. Secondly, the report highlights HS2 could cost the taxpayer millions more than planned. We'll stop this spiralling any further by delivering all the recommendations on cost control. That starts with HS2 fundamentally changing their approach to estimating costs. It includes certainty over funding, which the spending review has given. And it also means HS2 working with suppliers so their contracts incentivise saving costs for taxpayers. As far as I'm concerned, suppliers should make a better return the more taxpayer money they save. Thirdly, the review identified a deficit in capability and skills, with a fundamental lack of trust between my department and HS2 Limited. I am clear both capability and cultural issues within HS2 must be addressed. The new Chief Executive is already strengthening the organisation, including filling critical gaps in areas such as commercial expertise. And he will be backed by Mike Brown, announced today as the new chair. This is a new era of leadership the project desperately needs, with Mike bringing significant experience as a former TfL commissioner. Mark and Mike were part of the team with me that turned Crossrail into the Elizabeth line. We've done it before and we'll do it again. Fourthly, Euston Station. Between 2019 and 2023, HS2 Limited provided initial designs for Euston Station, coming in almost £2 billion over budget. When asked for a more affordable option, they offered one, costing £400 million more than the first attempt. The word affordable was clearly not part of the HS2 lexicon. The combined cost for these 2 failed designs, which has now been written off, was more than £250 million. What's more, the previous government announced a Euston Ministerial Task Force. Unbelievably, the task force never met. Mr. Speaker, this government recognises Euston's huge potential, and we've already committed funding to start the tunnelling from Old Oak Common to Euston, and we'll set out more details in our 10-year infrastructure strategy. And finally, we will use James Stewart's findings to transform infrastructure delivery across government. Implementing real change in how we deliver infrastructure is not just for the Department for Transport. This government is committed to implementing these recommendations and adopting a new approach to delivering infrastructure, as will be set out in our upcoming 10-year infrastructure strategy. In that spirit, the Prime Minister has also asked the Cabinet Secretary to consider the implications for the civil service and wider public sector of the issues raised in the report, including whether further action or investigation is warranted. Mr. Speaker, we're wasting no time in delivering on this review, and I will update Parliament on our progress through my 6 monthly reports, even if the information is uncomfortable. Because for a government that last week pledged billions in capital investment for new major projects, that believes in the power of transport infrastructure to improve lives and deliver on our plan for change, this level of failure cannot stand. We will learn the lessons of the past 15 years and restore our reputation of delivering world-class infrastructure projects. Mr. Speaker, I've spoken about our inheritance. I've spoken about James Stewart's review. Let me finally turn to Mark Wilde's initial assessment, which lays bare the shocking mismanagement of the project under previous governments. I will place a copy of his interim findings in the library. He stated in no uncertain terms, the overall project with respect to cost, schedule and scope is unsustainable. Based on his advice, I see no route by which trains can be running by 2033 as planned. He reveals costs will continue to increase if not taken in hand, further outstripping the budget set by the previous government. And he cannot be certain that all cost pressures have yet been identified. Mr. Speaker, it gives me no pleasure to deliver news like this. Billions of pounds of taxpayers' money has been wasted by constant scope changes, ineffective contracts and bad management. There are also allegations that parts of the supply chain have been defrauding taxpayers, and I have been clear these need to be investigated rapidly and rigorously. If fraud is proven, the consequences will be felt by all involved. Mr. Speaker, I have to be honest, it's an appalling mess, but it's one we will sort out. We need to set targets which we can confidently deliver, that the public can trust, and that will take time. But rest assured, where there are inefficiencies, we will root them out. Where further ministerial interventions are needed, I will make them without fear or favour. HS2 will finally start delivering on our watch. Mr. Speaker, years of mismanagement and neglect have turned HS2 into a shadow of that vision put forward 15 years ago. But this government was elected on a mandate to restore trust to our politics. That's why we won't shirk away from this challenge and why today we turn the page on infrastructure failures. I can think of no better mission than delivering new economic opportunities, new homes and commercial regeneration of an upskilled supply chain, all of which HS2 can still unlock. But no one should underestimate the scale of the reset required. Passengers and taxpayers deserve new railways the country can be proud of. The work to get HS2 back on track is firmly underway under this government, and I commend this statement to the House.
State Gareth Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the Secretary of State for her statement today and for updating the House on the initial findings of the HS2 reviews, and I thank her as well for advance notice and copy of it. On the substance of the Secretary of State's statement, I believe there is broad consensus in this House today on the central point, which is that mistakes were made in the delivery of HS2. As the Secretary of State has noted, costs more than doubled, the project has been repeatedly delayed, and the pandemic completely changed travel patterns, undercutting the assumptions that guided the original plans and caused construction costs to rise sharply across the world, in some cases by up to 40%, as a result of the supply chain shortages as the world emerged from the crisis. It has long been apparent that HS2 was not going according to plan. Mr. Speaker, in my first 2 years as a member of this House, I sat on the Public Accounts Committee, then chaired by the Honourable Lady, the member for Hackney South and Shoreditch. In the summer of 2021, we published a report on HS2 raising serious concerns in a number of areas with recommendations for how to improve the project. In 2023, the previous government conceded that HS2 was not going to plan and made fundamental changes to it, and the result of that was the cancellation of the northern leg of HS2 and the creation of the Network North plan. Under that plan, £36 billion was to be diverted from the northern leg of HS2 to a multitude of transport projects that would benefit more people in more places more quickly than the then government believed the delivery of HS2 could. But we also recognise that the path that we took to reach that point was not perfect, far from it. And I will not today pretend that the Network North plan was not a product of mistakes we made in the handling of HS2, because it clearly was. As a country, we must learn from those mistakes and we must not repeat them. It is on that note, Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I would like to express my gratitude to Mark Wilde, the Chief Executive Officer of HS2, for his continued efforts in supporting the delivery of the project. Recognising his leadership in rescuing the Crossrail project in London, it was the Noble Lord Harper, then the Secretary of State for Transport, who appointed him to lead HS2 in May 2024. We are all encouraged to see him playing a leading role in overseeing the correction and completion of the project, because his experience will be invaluable in helping to get it back on track. I would also like to welcome the appointment of Mike Brown as the new chairman of HS2 Limited. Like the Secretary of State, I know him from my years in London politics when he was Commissioner of Transport for London. He is a very capable man, and I wish him well in his new role. The Secretary of State has informed the House of her intention to accept 89 recommendations from the independent review into HS2. I've not yet seen a copy of this report, which I believe is being released today. While we will need to study these proposals carefully before confirming our support for them, I can assure her that if they offer better value for taxpayers, we will back them. Finally, the Secretary of State has raised very serious concerns that taxpayers may have been defrauded by subcontractors. I would like to assure her that if that proves to be the case, I will share her anger and will support whatever action is necessary to get to the bottom of these allegations. I would request that she keeps the House informed as HS2 and HMRC's investigations progress. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I would like to press the Secretary of State on a number of matters. In recent weeks, several projects have been announced by the government that are either funded by Network North or align with its commitments. However, we have yet to see a clear government commitment to either fully support the Network North plan or to scale it back. So can the Secretary of State now provide a definitive update on which elements will proceed and which will be abandoned? It has been reported that officials are considering a plan backed by the Mayor of Greater Manchester to build, and I quote, an HS2 light track between Birmingham and Crewe. Will she confirm if these reports are true? I would like to conclude by turning to the planning system more generally. The whole House will recall that HS2 grappled with legal challenges, High Court proceedings and judicial reviews, all of which added delay and cost. What assessment has the Secretary of State made of the extent to which legal challenges and judicial reviews delayed the delivery of HS2? How can future infrastructure projects be protected from excessive or politically motivated litigation? And finally, does the Secretary of State believe that sufficient action has been taken to prevent some of the more spurious concerns about such things as bats and newts obstructing future vital infrastructure projects?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his response and indeed for the tone in which he made his comments, and I was pleased to hear him acknowledge that mistakes had been made on HS2 by the previous government. I think he described the path as not being perfect. Mr. Speaker, I would go as far as saying it has been a shambolic mess. He did strike a sombre note in his remarks. I would ask him perhaps to consider going further once he's had the opportunity to read the full James Stewart report, because I do think an apology on the part of the party opposite for the mess that they left this infrastructure scheme in is undoubtedly warranted. I also thank him for the comments he made about the action that HS2 is taking with